Story 1. The toll booth that charges more than money. The attendant at the Northway toll booth asked for my payment, and when I handed her $3, she looked at the bills and said, "This isn't enough. The toll is higher for you." I asked how much, and she smiled with too many teeth, not just too many to be normal, but too many to fit in a human mouth, rows of them extending back into her throat like a shark. "Depends what you're willing to pay. Money or something else. Most drivers pay something else eventually. You've crossed here 47 times in the last year. By the 50th crossing, everyone pays the real toll." It was 2:34 a.m. on August 9th, 2023, and I was about to discover that some toll booths don't charge for road maintenance. They charge for passage through territories that aren't entirely in our world, and the price increases every time you cross until you're paying with pieces of yourself you didn't know could be taken. My name is Marcus Webb, 44 years old, 19 years running freight between Boston and Montreal, and I'd been crossing the Northway Toll Plaza twice a week for most of those years. Never noticed anything unusual until tonight. "I don't understand," I said, holding out the $3. "The sign says $3. I'm paying $3. "The sign shows the minimum toll," she replied, still smiling that impossible smile. "The personal toll varies. You, Marcus Webb, driving truck number 4738, have crossed this plaza 94 times in the past 18 months. Each crossing accrues debt. By your 100th crossing, you'll owe us something much more valuable than currency. We'll collect what we're owed, whether you agree to pay or not. But if you pay voluntarily now, the cost is lower. We're giving you a choice." "What kind of debt?" "I've paid the toll every time I've come through here." "You've paid the posted toll, the minimum. But this plaza exists between territories. North of here, the road follows different rules. South of here, normal physics apply. The plaza is the boundary, the transition point. Crossing it costs more than the state of New York acknowledges. There's a tax for moving between worlds, and we collect it. 50 crossings is when most drivers start noticing. By 75, they start paying the real toll. By 100, we take what's owed, whether they cooperate or not." I looked at her more carefully. She seemed normal except for the teeth. Middle-aged woman, toll booth uniform, name tag reading Sandra. But her eyes reflected light wrong, showing colors that didn't match the fluorescent booth lighting. And behind her, through the booth window, I could see depth that shouldn't exist. The booth looked normal-sized from outside, maybe 8 feet by 6 feet. But through her window, I saw a space that extended backward into impossible distance, a corridor lined with filing cabinets and shelves that receded into darkness. "What happens if I don't pay?" I asked. "You pay. Eventually, everyone pays. The debt accumulates until it becomes unbearable, until the weight of unpaid crossings makes your truck too heavy to drive, until you can't remember why you're traveling or where you're going. Then you stop here, get out of your truck, and walk into the plaza office to settle accounts. Most drivers reach that point by their 100th crossing. You're at 94. 6 more trips and you'll be compelled to pay." "Compelled?" "Your truck will pull into this lane automatically. Your engine will shut off. You'll climb out without choosing to, walk into the booth, and we'll take what's owed. It's not pleasant when we have to take it involuntarily. The debt extracts painfully when forced. But if you pay voluntarily, the transaction is smoother. We can negotiate. Find something you're willing to trade that satisfies the debt without destroying you." I felt cold spreading through my chest. "What do you take? What does this debt cost?" Sandra reached through the window, her arm extending further than arms should extend, reaching past the barrier between booth and truck, and touched my forehead with one finger. The contact was ice cold, and suddenly I saw what she meant. Images flashed through my mind, memories being extracted like files pulled from a cabinet, skills being unlearned like books erased. relationships being severed like threads cut with scissors. The toll booth took pieces of who you were. Memories, abilities, connections. The things that made you yourself. And it stored them in those filing cabinets that extended into impossible depth inside the booth. "We take what defines you," she said, withdrawing her hand. "A memory of your childhood, perhaps. Your ability to play guitar. Your relationship with your sister. Small pieces that you won't miss immediately, but that diminish you subtly. Most drivers pay with minor memories. What they had for breakfast on their 10th birthday, the name of their third-grade teacher, the feeling of their first kiss. Things that are technically important, but that you've already mostly forgotten. We just make the forgetting permanent, complete. Those memories go into our archives, stored as payment for passage. Why? What do you do with them? We maintain the boundary. The plaza exists at a convergence point where your world overlaps with territories that follow different rules. Keeping that boundary stable requires energy. Human memories, human experiences, human connections, they're all forms of energy. We collect them from travelers who cross between worlds, use them to fuel the boundary, keep the territories separate. Without us, the border would collapse. Things from the north would bleed south. Things from the south would contaminate the north. We're not villains, Marcus. We're customs agents. We collect tariffs to maintain the border. You've been benefiting from our work for years. Now it's time to pay your share. I sat in my truck, hands shaking on the steering wheel, trying to decide. $3 or a memory. Money or a piece of myself. The choice seemed obvious: pay with cash, keep my memories. But Sandra was shaking her head. The cash toll is no longer sufficient for you. You've accumulated too much debt. 94 crossings. The minimum payment now is one memory. Minor or major, your choice. But you must pay something from the archives of yourself, or you must turn around and never cross here again. "I'll take a different route," I said. "I'll avoid this plaza. You can try. But the plaza moves for debtors. Whatever route you take north from here, you'll find this toll booth waiting. We have jurisdiction over crossings in this region. You can delay payment, but you can't avoid it. Better to pay now voluntarily while you can still choose what you give up." I thought about my memories. Which ones could I afford to lose? Which ones mattered least? My 10th birthday breakfast, I honestly couldn't remember it anyway. My third-grade teacher, the name was already gone. My first kiss, that was Rebecca Marsh behind the school gym, and I still remembered her smile, but I hadn't seen her in 26 years. Would losing that memory really diminish me? "My first kiss," I said finally. "Take that memory. Let me through." Sandra nodded, reached through the window again, touched my forehead with 2 fingers this time. The contact was colder, lasted longer. I felt something pulling out of me, extracting itself from the networks of my brain. The memory of Rebecca Marsh, the feeling of nervousness and excitement, the taste of her strawberry lip gloss, the way she'd laughed afterward. All of it unraveled, pulled out like a thread yanked from cloth, leaving a gap where the memory had been. When Sandra withdrew her hand, I couldn't remember my first kiss. I knew intellectually that it had happened. I was 44 years old. Of course I'd kissed someone at some point, but I couldn't recall the specific event. Couldn't remember who, when, where, how it felt. The memory was gone, filed away in Sandra's impossible archives, payment for crossing her boundary. "Thank you for your cooperation," she said, smiling normally now. Regular number of teeth, regular smile. "You may proceed. Safe travels, Marcus. We'll see you again soon." The gate lifted. I drove through, continuing north toward Montreal, delivered my load, picked up return freight, headed south 2 days later. Approached the Northway Toll Plaza at 3:47 a.m. on August 11th. Different attendant this time, man named Richard, according to his name tag. But he had the same wrong reflection eyes, The same impossible depth visible through the booth window. $3, he said, plus one memory. You're at 95 crossings now. Debt is increasing. I just paid 2 days ago, I protested. I gave Sandra a memory. That was for crossing 94. This is crossing 95. Each passage requires payment. The debt doesn't pause just because you paid once. Every crossing costs, Marcus. You're locked into the payment schedule now. 1 memory per crossing minimum, until you reach 100. Then the debt recalculates and the price increases. What happens at 100? The price becomes 1 memory per crossing, but major memories only. No more trading away forgotten breakfasts and unnamed teachers. At 100 crossings, we collect significant memories. Your wedding day, the birth of your children, the death of your parents. Things that define who you are at a fundamental level. You have 5 more crossings before you reach that threshold. I suggest you find a different route soon unless you're willing to pay the major toll. I gave him a memory of my high school graduation. The ceremony, the walk across the stage, receiving my diploma. It had been 26 years ago and I'd rarely thought about it. Surely losing that memory wouldn't hurt too much. Richard touched my forehead, extracted the memory, filed it away in the archives. I drove through feeling diminished but still functional. Over the next 2 months I made 8 more crossings. Each time I paid with a memory I convinced myself didn't matter. My first day of kindergarten, the vacation to Florida when I was 12, my grandfather's funeral, learning to ride a bicycle, my first dog's name. Christmas morning when I was 7, each memory extracted, archived, gone. And each time I felt myself becoming less. The gaps in my history accumulated, the story of my life developed holes. I was becoming a person with an incomplete past, and I couldn't stop crossing because my job required the Montreal route and the toll plaza appeared on every possible path north. Crossing number 102 occurred on October 15, 2023. I pulled up to the booth at 1:23 a.m. knowing this was my 102nd crossing, knowing the price had increased. The attendant was Sandra again. "Marcus Webb," she said, "crossing 102. You've reached major toll territory. The minimum payment is now 1 significant memory. We require something from the last 10 years, something that defines your current self, not your childhood self. A memory that matters to your identity today." "I don't want to pay that," I said. "Then turn around. But understand, if you turn around, you can never cross here again. The debt will freeze at 102 crossings, but the toll for future crossings will be permanent refusal. You'll need to find employment that doesn't require traveling north. You'll need to restructure your entire life around avoiding this plaza." I thought about my options. My job depended on Montreal runs. My income, my career, my identity as a long-haul driver, all of it required crossing into Canada regularly. If I couldn't cross here, I'd have to quit, find new work, rebuild my life. Or I could pay the toll, trade 1 significant memory, continue my career. 1 memory seemed like a small price for maintaining everything else. "What memory do you want?" I asked. "We don't choose," Sandra said. "You choose. What's the least significant major memory you have? What event from the last 10 years do you value least?" I thought carefully. The last 10 years included my divorce. Painful, but that memory was useful, kept me from repeating mistakes. Included my father's death, terrible, but important, shaped my understanding of mortality, included buying my truck, establishing my business, relationships with friends and colleagues. Everything seemed important, everything defined who I was now, except 1 memory. 5 years ago, I'd taken a vacation to Seattle, spent a week alone touring the city, eating good food, hiking in nearby mountains. Pleasant week, relaxing, but ultimately unimportant. I hadn't formed lasting relationships there, hadn't had profound experiences. Just a nice vacation that I rarely thought about. That was the least significant major memory I had. My vacation to Seattle, I said. 5 years ago, 1 week in July. Take that. Sandra reached through, touched my forehead with 3 fingers this time, and the extraction was more painful. I felt the entire week unraveling. The flight to Seattle, the hotel room, the Pike Place Market, the Space Needle, the hiking trails, the restaurants, the peace I'd felt being alone with nature. All of it pulled out, archived, gone. When she finished, I had a week missing from my life 5 years ago. I knew intellectually I'd taken a vacation because there was a gap in my work schedule, but I couldn't remember where I'd gone or what I'd done. "Thank you," Sandra said. "You may proceed. 3 more crossings until the toll increases again." I drove through, delivered to Montreal, returned south 2 days later, paid with the memory of my first apartment, crossed again 2 weeks later, paid with the memory of learning to drive, crossed again, paid with my college roommate's name and face. Each crossing took another piece of me, another fragment of my history. I was becoming a person with a past full of gaps, a story with missing chapters, an identity built on Swiss cheese. By crossing 120, the toll increased again. Now Sandra wanted memories from the last 5 years. Now she wanted things that were part of my current identity, things I used regularly, things that defined my present self. I paid with the memory of buying my truck, kept the truck, lost the memory of acquiring it, paid with memories of specific delivery routes, specific clients, specific relationships with other drivers. Each crossing diminished me further. Crossing 140, the toll increased to memories from the last year. Sandra wanted recent events, things that were still fresh and active in my mind. I paid with last Christmas, paid with my nephew's birthday party, paid with a concert I'd attended in June. Each memory extracted, leaving gaps in my recent history. People would mention events I'd been present for, and I'd have no memory of them. Photos on my phone showed places I'd been, and I couldn't remember going. I'm writing this after crossing 163. The toll is now memories from the last month. Sandra takes something recent every time I cross, something I was just thinking about, something that's still warm in my memory. Last crossing, she took my memory of writing this warning. I wrote it, saved it to my computer, and then forgot writing it. Found it the next day, read my own words with no memory of composing them. This crossing, 164, she'll take something from today. Maybe the conversation I had with my dispatcher this morning. Maybe the breakfast I ate. Maybe the thought I had while driving that I wanted to quit this job and escape the toll plaza. Each crossing now cost me pieces of my immediate present, fragments of my ongoing life. I'm becoming a person who can't remember his own recent actions, who exists only in the moment because everything older than a month is archived in Sandra's impossible filing cabinets. At crossing 200, Sandra says the toll will be real time. She'll take memories as they form, extracting them immediately, leaving me unable to form new long-term memories at all. I'll exist in a perpetual present, driving my route by habit and GPS, unable to remember why I'm traveling or where I've been. I'll be a ghost driver, running freight through muscle memory, personality erased by the toll plaza's extractive tariff. I have 37 crossings left before I reach that state. 37 more trips before I'm completely hollowed out, all my memories archived as payment for passage. And I can't stop crossing. The debt is too large now. If I tried to turn around, if I tried to avoid the plaza, Sandra says the accumulated unpaid toll would extract itself forcibly. All 164 memories would be yanked from my brain simultaneously, leaving me catatonic, empty, a body without history or identity. So I keep crossing, keep paying, keep losing pieces of myself to the toll booth that charges more than money. And I'm writing this warning, even though Sandra will probably take the memory of writing it next time I cross. Maybe someone will read it. Maybe someone else on the Montreal route will see this and understand what's happening. Maybe they'll find a different career before they reach crossing 50, before the toll becomes mandatory, before Sandra starts collecting memories. If you're a driver and you cross the Northway Toll Plaza regularly, count your crossings. When you reach 47, find a different route. Don't let it reach 50. Don't let the plaza trap you in debt cycles that extract your history. Because once you start paying with memories, you can't stop. The toll only increases, and eventually you won't remember why you started driving this route in the first place. Won't remember who you were before the plaza claimed you. I'm Marcus Webb. I think I'm 44 years old, though I can't remember my last birthday. I drive trucks, though I can't remember learning how. I'm writing this warning, though I probably won't remember writing it tomorrow. The toll booth has taken most of me already. By crossing 200, it will take the rest. And Sandra will file my final memories in her impossible archives. Payment complete. Debt settled. Another driver hollowed out to maintain the boundary between worlds. Don't cross 50 times, please. Learn from my mistake. The toll is never just money. It's always something more. And once you start paying the real price, you can't afford to stop. Story 2. The rest stop populated by yesterday. The people at the Desert Rose Rest Area are all living 24 hours behind me, and they don't know they're in the past. I arrived on November 3rd, 2023 at 3:47 p.m., but everyone here thinks it's November 2nd. Their phones show November 2nd, their watches show November 2nd, and when I try to tell them it's actually the 3rd, they look at me like I'm insane. But I've been here for 6 hours now. My phone shows 9:47 p.m. November 3rd, and for them it's only 2:47 p.m. November 2nd. Time is moving forward for everyone, but we're on different tracks, separated by exactly 1 day. And the worst part is watching myself arrive. At 3:47 p.m. on their November 2nd, which is actually 3:47 p.m. on my November 3rd, I watched my own truck pull into this rest area. Watched myself climb out, walk to the bathroom, return to my truck. Watched myself park in the same space I'm parked in now, 1 day earlier. My name is Elizabeth Grant, 41 years old, 17 years driving commercial freight, and I'm trapped at a rest stop where yesterday is still happening around me, watching myself repeat actions I took 24 hours ago, unable to leave because the exit ramp leads back to the rest area entrance. I'd stopped here for a routine break. Bathroom, coffee, 15-minute rest. The Desert Rose Rest Area was a standard Arizona DOT facility on I-10. Nothing unusual about it. But when I tried to leave, when I pulled out of my parking space and followed the exit ramp, I found myself on the entrance ramp instead. Looping back into the same rest area, arriving again, I tried 5 times, each attempt ending the same way. Exit became entrance, and I was back in the Desert Rose parking lot. The other travelers didn't notice anything wrong. They parked, used facilities, left without issue. But when I tried to follow someone out, when I stayed directly behind another vehicle taking the exit ramp, I watched them disappear at a certain point, just vanish from the road ahead of me, while I continued forward and looped back to the entrance. Like there was a divergence in the road that sent other people forward in time but sent me backward, trapping me in this location. That's when I started noticing the date discrepancies. My phone showed November 3rd. Every phone I saw other people using showed November 2nd. My truck's GPS showed November 3rd. The rest area's information board showed November 2nd. I was 1 day ahead of everyone else here, or they were 1 day behind me, and the temporal difference was preventing me from leaving. I approached another driver, man in his 50s, fueling his truck. "Excuse me, what date is it?" "November 2nd, he said, barely looking at me. "You're sure, not the 3rd? "Pretty sure I know what day it is, November 2nd, 2023. Why?" I showed him my phone. November 3rd, displayed clearly. He looked at it, frowned, checked his own phone. November 2nd. "Your phone's wrong," he said. "Probably didn't update when you crossed time zones. It's November 2nd. "I'm from the future," I said, knowing how insane it sounded. "It's November 3rd. You're experiencing November 2nd, but I'm 24 hours ahead of you." He backed away, clearly thinking I was mentally unstable. "Sure, lady. Whatever you say." He climbed into his truck, drove away. I watched him take the exit ramp, watched him disappear at the same point where others had vanished. He left the rest area successfully because he was synchronized with the local timeline. I couldn't leave because I was temporarily displaced. I tried calling my dispatcher, explaining the situation. "Grant, what the hell are you talking about? You're supposed to deliver in Phoenix tomorrow. Are you saying you can't get out of a rest area?" "I'm trapped in yesterday. Everyone here is living November 2nd, but I'm on November 3rd. The temporal difference is preventing me from leaving." "Elizabeth, are you feeling okay? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine. I just need to figure out how to escape a rest area that exists one day in the past. I'm sending someone to check on you. Stay put." She hung up. I waited, but no one came. How could they? If they arrived on November 3rd, they'd be in the same timeline as me, unable to reach November 2nd where the rest area existed. Or they'd arrive on November 2nd and we'd miss each other by 24 hours. The temporal displacement created an isolation bubble. I could see people from yesterday, interact with them, exist in the same physical space, but I couldn't leave with them because our timelines didn't align. As the hours passed, I watched the rest area's population cycle. People would arrive, stay briefly, leave, but certain individuals appeared multiple times. A woman in a red sedan parked at 4:15 p.m., used the bathroom, left at 4:23 p.m. Then an hour later, the same woman in the same red sedan arrived at 4:15 p.m. again, repeated the exact same actions, left at 4:23 p.m. She was looping through her November 2nd repeatedly, living the same 8 minutes over and over, unaware that she'd done it before. I approached her during her third cycle. "Excuse me, have you been here before?" "First time stopping here today," she said. "Why?" "You've been here 3 times in the last 3 hours. You arrive at 4:15, leave at 4:23. Same routine each time." She looked at me strangely. "I've only been here once. Just arrived a few minutes ago." "Check your memory. Try to remember the last hour." She thought for a moment, then looked confused. I was driving on I-10. Then I'm here. I don't remember the last hour. It's just blank." "You're looping," I said, "living the same 8 minutes repeatedly. The rest area is trapping you in a cycle. That's impossible." But her voice wavered, uncertain. She checked her phone, checked her car's clock. "What time is it really?" "For you, it's 4:18 p.m. on November 2nd. For me, it's 7:18 p.m. on November 3rd. We're in different timelines, sharing the same space. And you're repeating your visit every hour." She got back in her car quickly, tried to leave. I watched her take the exit ramp, watched her vanish at the divergence point. But 30 minutes later, at 4:45 p.m., she reappeared on the entrance ramp, arriving at the rest area for another cycle. Her loop had shortened. Now she was repeating every 30 minutes instead of every hour. The rest area was compressing time for certain people, trapping them in shorter and shorter loops. And I was displaced forward by 24 hours, unable to leave, watching yesterday repeat around me. At 7:47 p.m. on my November 3rd timeline, which corresponded to 6:47 p.m. on the rest area's November 2nd, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My own truck pulling into the parking area. Myself climbing out, walking to the bathroom. I was watching myself from yesterday, watching my first arrival at this rest area. And I realized I was in a loop too. I'd been here yesterday, stopped for a normal break, left without incident. But now I was experiencing yesterday again, displaced by 24 hours. Watching my previous self repeat actions I'd already taken. I approached my past self carefully. I looked tired, stressed. Exactly how I'd felt yesterday. I waited until my past self came out of the bathroom. "Elizabeth," I said, "don't go back to your truck. You need to leave right now. Don't stay here." My past self looked at me, startled. "How do you know my name?" "I'm you, from tomorrow. I stopped here yesterday and now I'm trapped. You're making the mistake right now. If you stay here, if you park and rest, you'll end up like me, displaced by 24 hours, unable to leave." "This is a joke, right? Someone put you up to this." "Check your phone. What date is it?" "November 2nd. Why?" I showed her my phone. "November 3rd. I'm from your future. Tomorrow you'll be standing here with a phone that shows November 3rd, trying to warn yourself not to stay. But you won't listen because you didn't listen. We're in a loop, Elizabeth. This rest area traps people in temporal cycles. Get in your truck right now and leave. Don't park. Don't rest. Just go." My past self looked at me with suspicion mixed with fear. "You're insane," she said, but her voice was uncertain. She was seeing the date on my phone, seeing how similar we looked, feeling the wrongness of the situation. "Please," I said, "trust me, I'm you. Leave now while you still can." But my past self didn't listen, didn't trust. She walked back to her truck, got in, pulled into a parking space, the same space I was parked in now. And I knew what would happen next. She'd rest for 15 minutes, try to leave, discover the exit, looped back to entrance, and end up trapped here on November 3rd, watching November 2nd repeat. The loop would continue. Yesterday's Elizabeth would become today's Elizabeth, who would become tomorrow's Elizabeth. All of us trapped in successive 24-hour displacements, watching ourselves repeat the same mistake. I returned to my own truck, sat in the cab, tried to think. The rest area was a temporal trap, collecting travelers in different timeline layers. Some people looped through minutes, repeating the same actions hourly. Others were displaced by days, watching earlier versions of themselves arrive. The building itself might be experiencing all timelines simultaneously, existing across multiple dates at once. My phone showed 9:47 p.m. November 3rd. I'd been here 6 hours. But that meant in 6 more hours, at 3:47 a.m. November 4th, another version of me would arrive, displaced by another 24 hours. She'd be watching me the same way I was watching November 2nd me. The displacements were stacking, multiple versions of Elizabeth Grant, all occupying the Desert Rose rest area, each one day ahead of the previous, all trapped in temporal layers. I tested this theory, waited until 3:47 a.m. according to my phone, watched the entrance ramp. And there she came, my truck identical to mine, another me climbing out, looking around with growing panic. She was on November 4th, watching November 3rd me, who was watching November 2nd me. 3 layers deep now, and I realized it would continue infinitely. Every 24 hours, another displaced Elizabeth would arrive, adding another layer, creating an infinite stack of temporal copies. I approached my November 4th self. "Elizabeth, I know you're confused. I'm you from yesterday. You're trapped in a temporal displacement. This rest area collects travelers across multiple timelines. We're all here simultaneously, separated by 24-hour intervals." "How do I leave?" she asked immediately, believing me faster than I'd believed my November 4th self when she'd tried to warn me. "I don't know yet. I've been trying for 6 hours. The exit loops back to entrance. We're stuck here until we figure out the mechanism. There has to be a way out. If there is, I haven't found it. And I'm you from yesterday, which means you won't find it either. We're repeating each other's actions, experiencing the same confusion, asking the same questions. It's a loop within a loop. We worked together, my November 4th self and I, trying to find escape routes. We examined the rest area thoroughly, looking for temporal anomalies, points where the timeline might be thinner or more permeable. We found nothing. The Desert Rose rest area was solidly trapped in its multi-layered temporal structure, and we were caught in it. At 3:47 p.m. November 4th, according to my timeline, I watched my November 5th self arrive, then my November 6th self at 3:47 a.m. November 5th, then November 7th, 8th, 9th. The versions accumulated. By what my phone claimed was November 10th, there were 8 versions of me at the rest area, all displaced by successive 24-hour intervals, all trying to find escape routes, all failing. We formed a council, the 8 Elizabeth Grants, comparing notes across our timelines. November 2nd me, the earliest version, was still trying to leave, unaware that she was being watched by 7 future selves. November 10th me, the latest version, had the most information, had seen all the previous attempts, knew what didn't work. We need to stop arriving, November 10th me said. If we keep adding layers, we'll be trapped here forever, infinitely multiplying across timelines. How do we stop arriving? I asked. I was November 6th me at this point. I'm you from 4 days ago. Whatever you're doing now, I'll do in 4 days. We can't break the cycle from inside it. What if we change the arrival time? November 7th me suggested. If one of us arrives at a different time, breaks the 3:47 pattern, maybe that disrupts the loop. We tried. November 10th, me attempted to arrive at 4 p.m. instead of 3:47 p.m. by waiting before entering the rest area. But time compressed. The 13 minutes between 3:47 and 4 were skipped, and she arrived at 3:47 anyway. The rest area enforced its temporal structure. We couldn't arrive at any time except 3:47. We're trapped, November 8th me said. Infinitely replicating across timelines, all converging at this rest area at 3:47, all failing to escape. It's a temporal prison. There has to be an origin, I said. A first Elizabeth who arrived here and created the displacement. If we find her, if we prevent her from stopping here, maybe the entire cascade collapses. We searched backwards through timelines, trying to identify the original arrival. But every version of me remembered arriving for the first time, remembered thinking it was a routine stop. None of us were the origin. The first Elizabeth was lost somewhere in the past, earlier than any of our memories reached. Days passed, or seemed to pass. My phone continued counting forward. November 11th, 12th, 13th. More versions of me arrived, displaced by increasing intervals. By November 20th, according to my phone, there were 17 Elizabeth Grants at the Desert Rose rest area, all experiencing different dates, all trapped in temporal displacement. We stopped trying to escape individually, started working collectively. 17 versions of the same person, pooling knowledge across timelines, trying to solve the temporal trap through brute force iteration. We mapped the rest area completely, identified every physical feature, every temporal quirk. We discovered that the bathroom mirrors showed reflections from different timelines. Look in the mirror, see yourself from yesterday or tomorrow. We discovered that the vending machines dispensed food from various dates. Snacks that wouldn't be manufactured for months, drinks that had expired years ago. The rest area existed across all timelines simultaneously. It wasn't displaced by 24 hours. It was displaced by every hour, existing at every point in time at once, and we were trapped in it, experiencing one timeline each while the building itself experienced all of them. I'm writing this on what my phone claims is November 27th, 2023. I've been at the Desert Rose rest area for 24 days, according to my timeline. There are now 24 versions of me here, one for each day I've been trapped. We've formed a community, the multiple Elizabeths, supporting each other across temporal layers. We share food, share information, share the burden of knowing we're infinitely replicating across time. New versions arrive every day at 3:47 a.m. and 3:47 p.m. Each one confused, each one needing explanation, each one eventually accepting that they're trapped in temporal displacement at a rest area that exists outside normal chronology. We help them adjust, we explain the situation, we welcome them to the community of displaced Elizabeth Grants who all occupy the Desert Rose Rest area simultaneously across multiple timelines. I don't know if we'll ever escape. I don't know if escape is possible. The rest area might trap us forever, adding new layers infinitely, creating endless versions of the same person, all separated by 24-hour intervals. We might be here eternally, a temporal colony of Elizabeth Grants living in parallel timelines at a rest stop that exists everywhere and everywhen. If you're driving I-10 through Arizona and you see the Desert Rose Rest area, don't stop. Don't pull in for bathroom breaks or coffee or rest. Keep driving. Because once you stop, once you park and turn off your engine, you might find yourself temporally displaced. You might discover that yesterday is still happening around you, that you're watching yourself arrive from the past, that exit ramps loop back to entrance ramps. And you might spend the rest of your life trapped at a rest area, infinitely replicating across timelines, joining a community of temporal copies who all made the same mistake. I'm Elizabeth Grant. I stopped at the Desert Rose Rest area on November 2nd, 2023. I'm still here on November 27th. I'll be here on December 27th. I'll be here forever, watching yesterday repeat, watching tomorrow arrive, existing in a timeline that never advances beyond this parking lot. There are 24 of me now. There will be hundreds eventually. All Elizabeth Grants, all trapped, all living at the rest stop where yesterday never ends. Don't stop, please. Learn from my mistake. The Desert Rose Rest area isn't what it seems. It's a temporal trap, and once it catches you, you're caught forever. Story 3, the radio station that broadcasts your regrets. The radio in my truck locked onto a frequency that doesn't exist. 98.1 FM. Which should be empty static between 98.0 and 98.3, and started broadcasting my own voice, reading a list of every regret I've accumulated in 46 years of life. Not major regrets like career mistakes or failed relationships. Small regrets. The time I didn't call my friend back in 2007. The book I meant to read in high school but never did. The apology I should have made to a coworker in 2015. The radio voice, my voice but emotionless and mechanical, listed them chronologically starting from childhood, working forward year by year. It's been broadcasting for 14 hours now. I'm up to 2019 with 4 more years to go. And after it finishes listing regrets, the voice says it will move to consequences. It will describe what would have happened if I'd made different choices, show me alternate timelines where I called my friend back, read that book, apologize to my coworker. My name is Richard Nolan, 46 years old, 22 years driving trucks, and I'm listening to a radio station that's cataloging every minor failure of my life, preparing to show me everything I could have been if I'd been slightly better in 1,000 small ways. The station first appeared on I-80 somewhere in Nebraska at 11:47 p.m. on October 28, 2023. I'd been scanning through channels, looking for something to keep me awake during a late-night haul. Most frequencies were static or weak signals bleeding over from distant cities. But 98.1 came through crystal clear, and the voice speaking was mine. Richard Nolan, age 7, November 1984. You were invited to Sarah Mitchell's birthday party. You said you'd attend but didn't. You hurt her feelings. She cried that night, regret recorded. The voice paused, then continued. Richard Nolan, age 7, March 1985. You saw a dog hit by a car. You walked past without checking if it was alive. The dog suffered for 3 hours before dying. You could have helped. Regret recorded. I recognized both incidents, remembered them vaguely from childhood. They'd been buried in decades of accumulated memory, but yes, I'd skipped Sarah Mitchell's party for reasons I couldn't remember, and yes, I'd seen a hit dog and hadn't stopped to help. Minor incidents, barely significant. But the radio was cataloging them, storing them, treating them as failures worth documenting. The broadcast continued. Year by year, the voice listed small regrets. Age 9. Didn't visit my grandfather in the hospital before he died. Age 11. Stole candy from a store. Age 14. Spread a rumor about a classmate. Age 17. Didn't study for a final exam and failed. Each regret was minor individually, barely worth remembering. But accumulated over decades, they formed a catalog of small failures, a comprehensive list of every time I'd been slightly worse than I could have been. I tried changing the channel. The radio wouldn't respond, tried turning it off. It stayed on, broadcasting at exactly the same volume regardless of the controls. Tried pulling the power fuse. The radio continued working, receiving power from some source that wasn't my truck's electrical system. The broadcast was locked in. I was forced to listen to my own voice cataloging my failures. By 3 a.m., the voice had reached my 20s. Regrets were more numerous now, more significant. Age 22. Didn't pursue a relationship with a woman who'd shown interest. Age 24. Quit a job without giving proper notice. Age 27. Missed my sister's wedding because I prioritized work. The regrets accumulated, and with each one I felt weight settling on my chest. I'd forgotten most of these incidents, buried them under years of daily life. But the radio remembered. The radio had perfect memory of every small failure I'd committed. "This is a comprehensive catalog," my voice said during a brief pause. 46 years of minor regrets, totaling 3,247 discrete incidents where you chose poorly. Average of 70 regrets per year. You are a statistically normal human in terms of regret accumulation. This broadcast will take approximately 18 hours to complete the listing phase. After that, we move to consequences phase. You will hear detailed descriptions of alternate timelines where you made better choices, where you called your friend back, where you helped the dog, where you attended the birthday party. You will learn what your life could have been if you'd been slightly better in 3,247 small ways. I pulled over at a rest area, unable to drive while listening to this catalog of failures. Sat in my truck while my own voice continued listing regrets from my 30s. Age 31. Harsh words to my father during an argument. Age 33. Didn't tip a waitress who'd given excellent service. Age 35. Ignored a homeless person asking for help. Each incident was minor. Each one barely mattered individually. But hearing them listed consecutively, hearing the accumulation of small failures was crushing. Other truckers at the rest area noticed something was wrong. One knocked on my window. "You okay in there?" I couldn't explain. Couldn't say that my radio was broadcasting a comprehensive catalog of every regret I'd ever accumulated. He'd think I was insane. I waved him off, stayed in my cab, continued listening to my own voice documenting my failures. By dawn on October 29th, the voice had reached my 40s. Regrets were fewer now, but more intentional. Age 42. Didn't visit my mother as often as I should have. Age 43, harsh review for a trainee driver who was struggling. Age 44, didn't attend my nephew's graduation. The recent regrets hurt more because I remembered them clearly, could still feel the guilt associated with each decision. "We're approaching real time," my voice said. "Regrets from the last 2 years. These are fresher, more painful. These are the failures you still think about. The decisions you still wish you could change. Listen carefully, Richard. This is who you are. This is the accumulation of your choices. The catalog continued. Last year, didn't call my sister on her birthday. 6 months ago, rude to a customer service representative. 3 months ago, impatient with a slow driver, honked aggressively. Each recent regret was accompanied by vivid memory. I could see the incidents clearly, could remember my thought process, could feel the guilt renewing. At 1:47 p.m., October 29th, 14 hours after the broadcast started, my voice finished listing the regrets. 3,247 incidents cataloged completely, my entire life's accumulation of small failures documented in perfect detail. Listing phase complete, my voice said. Beginning consequences phase. You will now hear alternate timeline descriptions. For each regret, we will describe what would have happened if you'd made the better choice. Some changes are minor. Some are profound. Listen carefully, Richard. This is everything you could have been. The consequences phase began. Regret 1. Sarah Mitchell's birthday party. If you had attended, you would have befriended her brother Tom. Tom would have introduced you to his cousin Rachel in 1997. You would have married Rachel in 2001. You would have had 2 children. Your daughter would have become a doctor. Your son would have opened a restaurant. You would have lived in Vermont, worked in local logistics, retired at 62, died at 87, surrounded by family. Instead, you skipped the party. That entire timeline collapsed. Rachel married someone else. Your children were never born. The doctor who would have saved 14 lives was never trained. The restaurant that would have employed 37 people was never opened. One birthday party you skipped created ripples that eliminated an entire branch of possible futures. I sat stunned, listening to the description of a life I could have lived if I'd attended a birthday party at age 7. It sounded better than my actual life. Fuller, richer, more connected. And I'd lost it because I'd chosen not to go to a party I probably skipped for some trivial reason I couldn't even remember. Regret 2. The injured dog. If you had stopped to help, you would have met the dog's owner. She would have been grateful. She was a nurse, and she would have mentored you toward a medical career. You would have become a paramedic in 1998. You would have saved 33 lives over the course of your career. One of those lives was a child who would have grown up to develop renewable energy technology that would have prevented significant environmental damage. Instead, you walked past the dog. That timeline collapsed. The child died in a different accident. The technology was never developed. Environmental damage continued. One dog you didn't help eliminated futures where you were a hero and where major progress was made. The consequences were cascading. Each small regret had eliminated entire branches of possibility, entire timelines where my life was better, or where I contributed to the world in meaningful ways. And the radio was describing all of them, showing me everything I'd lost through small failures. Regret 17. Not studying for your final exam. If you had studied, you would have passed with high marks. Those marks would have earned you a scholarship. The scholarship would have led to a different college. At that college, you would have met Professor Williams. He would have recognized your potential, mentored you toward engineering. You would have designed transportation systems that improved efficiency and reduced emissions. 40 million commuters would have benefited from your designs over 30 years. Instead, you didn't study. You failed the exam. The scholarship went to someone else. Professor Williams never met you. The transportation systems were never designed. 40 million commuters continued using inefficient systems. One exam you didn't study for eliminated futures where you changed millions of lives. I couldn't bear it anymore. Couldn't listen to descriptions of all the better versions of myself that could have existed if I'd made slightly different choices. I tried everything to stop the broadcast, smashed the radio with a hammer. It continued broadcasting through the broken speaker. Disconnected all the wiring. It transmitted directly into my head, the voice speaking from inside my skull. Cut the antenna. It received from sources that didn't require physical transmission. The broadcast was inescapable. The consequences phase would continue until every regret had been analyzed, every alternate timeline described. 3,247 regrets meant 3,247 descriptions of better futures I'd lost. By October 30th, the radio had analyzed 100 regrets. Each description took 15 to 20 minutes, detailing complex cascades of consequences from single small decisions. I learned about marriages I'd missed, careers I'd never pursued, children I'd never had, friends I'd never made, accomplishments I'd never achieved. Each alternate timeline was better than my actual life. Each showed me being happier, more successful, more fulfilled. Regret 63 harsh words to your father. If you had apologized immediately, your relationship would have healed completely. He would have shared stories about his own father that would have given you perspective on family patterns. You would have broken cycles of emotional distance. Your future relationships would have been healthier. You would have been able to maintain your marriage instead of divorcing. Your ex-wife would have stayed. Your actual children would have been raised in a stable home instead of split custody. They would have been happier, more successful. Your daughter would not have developed anxiety disorder. Your son would not have struggled with substance abuse. One apology you didn't make created cascading damage through your family for decades. That one hurt particularly deep. My divorce and its effects on my children were major regrets, things I thought about often. Hearing that they could have been prevented by a single apology 30 years ago was devastating. One small choice. Decades of consequences. By November 1st, the radio had analyzed 500 regrets. I'd stopped driving entirely, parked at a truck stop, unable to function while listening to comprehensive catalogs of all my failures and their consequences. Other drivers asked if I was okay. I couldn't explain. Couldn't say that I was being forced to hear descriptions of 3,000 better versions of my life that I'd lost through small, poor choices. The radio continued relentlessly. Regret 800. Didn't read that book in high school. If you had, it would have changed your worldview. You would have become more empathetic. You would have chosen helping professions instead of isolating professions. You would have worked with disadvantaged communities. You would have directly improved 1,700 lives. Instead, you didn't read the book. Those 1,700 people struggled without your help. One book you didn't read eliminated your potential to be a major positive force. The broadcast was designed to break me, and it was succeeding. Each regret revealed cascading consequences I'd never imagined. Each alternate timeline showed me being better, doing better, living better. The accumulation of lost possibilities was crushing. I'm writing this on November 6, 2023. The radio has analyzed 1,300 regrets so far. I have 1,947 remaining. At the current pace, the consequences phase will take another 3 weeks. 3 weeks of listening to descriptions of everything I could have been if I'd been slightly better in thousands of small ways. I can't escape, can't turn off the radio, can't stop the broadcast. I'm forced to hear every consequence, every lost timeline, every version of myself that was better than the version that exists. And when it finishes, when all 3,247 regrets have been analyzed, my voice says there will be a final phase. Summary. A comprehensive description of the optimal life I could have lived if every regret had been corrected, if every choice had been the better choice. That optimal life, the voice promises, will be so far superior to my actual life that comparison will be unbearable. I will hear about the person I could have been if I'd been perfect in small ways, and I will understand exactly how far I've fallen short of my potential. I don't know if I'll survive hearing that summary. Don't know if I can bear learning how good my life could have been if I'd simply been slightly better 3,247 times, but I have no choice. The radio won't stop. The broadcast will continue until it's finished cataloging all my failures and their consequences. If your radio locks onto an impossible frequency, if you hear your own voice cataloging regrets, turn your truck around immediately. Abandon the vehicle if necessary. Don't listen to the listing phase. Don't hear the consequences phase. Don't wait for the summary. Because once the broadcast starts, it won't stop. And you'll be forced to hear everything you could have been. Everything you lost through small, poor choices. Every version of yourself that was better than the version you became. I'm Richard Nolan. I'm listening to a catalog of my failures. I have 1,947 regrets remaining. By the time the broadcast finishes, I'll know exactly how much potential I wasted, and I'll have to live with that knowledge forever. The radio is at regret 1,303 now. My voice is describing what would have happened if I'd been kinder to a waitress in 2012. Apparently, that small kindness would have changed her entire life trajectory, inspired her to pursue. Education led to her becoming a teacher who influenced hundreds of students positively. I didn't show that kindness. Those students were never influenced. One small failure, hundreds of consequences. The broadcast continues, the regrets accumulate, and I sit in my truck listening to everything I could have been, hating everything I am. Story 4. The weigh station that weighs more than cargo. The scale at the Riverside weigh station measured my truck at 147,000 pounds and my trailer was empty. Completely empty. I delivered my load in Portland 6 hours ago, deadheading back to Seattle with nothing but air in my 53-foot van. My truck and trailer together couldn't weigh more than 32,000 pounds. But the digital display insisted otherwise, and the inspector was walking toward me with an expression that suggested this happened regularly, that he dealt with impossible weights every day. "You're carrying more than cargo," he said through my window. "You're carrying weight that isn't physical, emotional weight, psychological weight, burdens that don't show up on normal scales but that this station measures. 147,000 pounds of accumulated trauma, guilt, regret, and unexpressed grief. You need to unload before you can proceed. My name is Jonathan Harper, 51 years old, 26 years driving commercial trucks. And I was about to discover that some weigh stations don't measure what you're hauling. They measure what you're carrying inside yourself, and the loads we accumulate internally can be far heavier than anything we transport professionally." "That's impossible," I said, staring at the weight display. "My trailer is empty. There's nothing to weigh." "Physical cargo isn't the only weight," the inspector replied. His name tag read Morrison, and his eyes showed the weariness of someone who'd had this conversation hundreds of times. "This station measures total weight, physical and non-physical. Your truck weighs 31,800 pounds physically, but you're carrying 115,200 pounds of non-physical weight. Emotional burdens, unresolved trauma, suppressed feelings, accumulated stress. The station measures it all. You're saying I have emotional weight. That's insane." "Is it? You've been driving for 26 years. How many funerals have you missed because you were on the road? How many relationships have you sacrificed for your career? How much guilt have you accumulated from choices you made or didn't make? All of that has weight, Jonathan. It doesn't show up on regular scales, but it's real. It's measurable. And this station measures it." I climbed out of my truck, approached the scale house. Morrison led me inside, showed me a computer screen displaying detailed weight analysis. Physical cargo, 0 pounds. Truck, weight, 23,400 pounds. Trailer weight, 8,400 pounds. Then a separate column, emotional cargo, 115,200 pounds, broken down into categories. Grief, 42,300 pounds. Guilt, 38,900 pounds. Regret, 21,000 pounds. Shame, 8,700 pounds. Unresolved trauma, 4,300 pounds. This is ridiculous, I said. You can't measure emotions in pounds. We can, and we do. Every truck that comes through here carries some non-physical weight. Most drivers are in the 50 to 70,000 pound range. You're at 115,000. That's dangerously high. It's affecting your driving, your judgment, your physical health. We can't let you proceed until you've unloaded some of that burden. How do I unload emotions? You process them. Talk to our counselor. Work through the grief, address the guilt, resolve the regrets. As you process, the weight decreases. When you're below 80,000 pounds, non-physical weight will let you leave. Until then, you're parked here. You can't hold me here. This isn't legal. State Regulation 47C, any commercial vehicle carrying unsafe weight, physical or non-physical, must reduce load before proceeding. Your non-physical weight is unsafe. You're parked until you reduce it. Morrison led me to a small office in the back of the way station building. A woman was waiting there, maybe 45, professional appearance, nameplate showing Dr. Sarah Chen, licensed counselor. Jonathan Harper, she said, gesturing to a chair. I've reviewed your weight analysis, 115,000 pounds of non-physical cargo. Let's talk about it. What's the grief? 42,000 pounds suggests multiple significant losses. I didn't want to talk about it, hadn't talked about it in years. But I was trapped at this way station, unable to leave until I reduced my emotional weight, so I started speaking. My father died in 2009. I was on a run to Denver, couldn't make it back in time for his final hours. He died while I was driving through Kansas. I wasn't there. 42,000 pounds of grief, you said. Most of it is probably from that. I never processed it, never dealt with it, just kept driving. Dr. Chen nodded, typing notes into her computer. That's approximately 28,000 pounds of unprocessed grief right there. What else? 42,000 suggests more than one loss. My marriage ended in 2015. My wife left because I was always on the road, always choosing work over family. I was there physically maybe 30% of the time. She got tired of being alone, found someone else. I don't blame her. But I never dealt with that loss either. Just kept driving. Another 7,000 pounds. We're at 35,000 pounds of grief identified. What's the remaining 7,000? I thought about it. What else had I lost? My daughter stopped talking to me in 2018. She blamed me for the divorce, for not being present during her childhood. She's 24 now. We haven't spoken in 5 years. I don't even know where she lives. That's the remaining 7,000. You've accumulated grief from 3 major losses, none of which you've properly processed. You've just kept working, kept driving, kept suppressing the feelings. And they've accumulated, Jonathan, 42,000 pounds of unprocessed grief sitting in your psychological cargo hold. So what do? You feel it. You acknowledge it. You allow yourself to grieve properly. Right now, you're carrying your father's death like it happened yesterday. You're carrying your divorce like it just occurred. You're carrying your daughter's absence like it's a fresh wound. These losses need to be processed, integrated, accepted, then the weight reduces. We spent 3 hours talking about my father, remembering him, acknowledging the pain of missing his final hours, accepting that I couldn't change the past. Dr. Chen guided me through the grief, helped me process feelings I'd buried for 14 years. By the end, I was crying, something I hadn't done since the funeral. But I felt lighter. Dr. Chen checked her computer. Your grief weight is down to 31,000 pounds. You've processed about 11,000 pounds in this session. Good progress. But we need to address the guilt too. 38,900 pounds suggests significant unresolved guilt. Guilt about what? That's what we need to explore. What are you guilty about? What choices have you made that you regret? What harm have you caused that you haven't addressed? I thought about my guilt. It was extensive. Decades of small and large failures, compromises, bad decisions. I prioritized work over family for 26 years. Missed my daughter's recitals, her graduation, her milestones. I was physically present maybe 30% of her childhood. I failed as a father. That's probably most of the guilt. That's about 25,000 pounds. What else? I was harsh to drivers I trained. Impatient, critical. One driver quit because of how I treated him. He had potential, but I crushed his confidence. I never apologized, never reached out to make it right. That's approximately 3,000 pounds. What else? I listed more guilt. Arguments with my ex-wife where I'd been unnecessarily cruel. Times I'd been dishonest with dispatchers. Occasions when I'd taken shortcuts that compromised safety. Each admission reduced my guilt weight slightly. By the end of the session, I was at 21,000 pounds of guilt, down from 38,900. Progress, Dr. Chen said, but you're still at 92,000 pounds total non-physical weight. We need more sessions. I spent 5 days at the Riverside Way Station. Each day I met with Dr. Chen, worked through my emotional cargo. We processed grief, addressed guilt, resolved regrets. Each session reduced my non-physical weight. By day 3, I was at 78,000 pounds. By day 5, I was at 62,000 pounds. You're below the 80,000 pound threshold, Morrison said when I checked my weight on day 5. You're cleared to proceed. But understand, Jonathan, emotional weight accumulates constantly. You'll need to process regularly, address feelings as they arise, or you'll end up back here. The way station will catch you again. How often should I check? Every truck that passes through here gets measured. Most drivers don't notice. Their non-physical weight is within normal ranges. But when you cross 80,000 pounds, we stop you, make you unload. Consider it preventative maintenance. You maintain your truck. You need to maintain your mental health too. I left the Riverside Way Station with 62,000 pounds of non-physical cargo, less than half of what I'd arrived with. I felt different, lighter, not just metaphorically, but in some real way. My truck drove better. My thinking was clearer. Processing the emotional weight had actual physical effects. Over the following months, I returned to the Riverside Way Station 6 more times. Each time, Morrison measured me, checked my non-physical weight. It fluctuated, sometimes up to 75,000 pounds, sometimes down to 55,000. When it crossed 80,000, he stopped me, sent me to Dr. Chen, and I processed whatever new emotional cargo I'd accumulated. I learned to recognize the weight without needing the scale. Learned to feel when my guilt was building, when my grief was accumulating, when my regrets were piling up. And I learned to address it before it reached dangerous levels. Talked to counselors regularly, processed feelings as they arose, maintained my emotional health the same way I maintained my truck. Other drivers started noticing I was different. Calmer, more present, less stressed. I told a few of them about the Riverside Way Station, about non-physical weight measurement. Some believed me. Most thought I was insane. But the ones who believed, who went to the station and checked their weight, discovered they were carrying massive emotional cargo too. And they started processing it. There's a community now, drivers who understand non-physical weight, who monitor their emotional cargo, who stop at the Riverside Way station for regular mental health maintenance. We call ourselves the Light Load Convoy. We've learned that driving isn't just about transporting physical cargo, it's about managing what we carry internally, processing the weight that accumulates from years on the road. I'm Jonathan Harper. I've been driving for 26 years. I'm currently carrying 58,000 pounds of non-physical weight, down from 115,000 when I first discovered the Riverside Way station measured more than cargo. I maintain my emotional load now. Process grief before it becomes overwhelming. Address guilt before it becomes paralyzing. Resolve regrets before they compound. If you're a driver and you feel heavy despite hauling empty, find the Riverside Way station. Let Morrison measure your non-physical weight. Let Dr. Chen help you unload emotional cargo you've been carrying for years. Because the loads inside us can be far heavier than anything we transport, and driving with excessive internal weight is dangerous to ourselves and others. The road takes a toll, not just on trucks, but on people. And if we don't maintain both, eventually something breaks. Better to stop at the way station, check your load, and unload what you don't need to carry anymore. Your truck can only handle so much weight. So can you. Story 5. The truck that drives itself after midnight. My truck started driving itself at exactly 12:01 a.m. on September 14th, 2023, and I couldn't stop it. The steering wheel turned without my input, the accelerator pressed without my foot, and I became a passenger in my own vehicle while it drove routes I'd never planned toward destinations I'd never chosen. The GPS showed nothing, just blank screen. But the truck knew where it was going. It drove for 6 hours before pulling into a warehouse I'd never seen, backing up to a dock that shouldn't exist, and waiting for something to be loaded. Whatever my truck was delivering during these midnight drives wasn't cargo I'd been hired to haul. My name is Patrick Donovan, 54 years old, 29 years as an owner-operator, and I was about to discover that some trucks have routes that precede their drivers. Assignments that exist outside normal logistics networks. Deliveries that serve purposes their human operators aren't meant to understand. It started with the steering. I was driving I-40 eastbound through Oklahoma, planning to stop at a truck stop near Oklahoma City around midnight. But at 12:01 a.m. precisely, the steering wheel rotated left on its own, taking an exit I hadn't planned to take. I tried to correct, yanking the wheel right, but it resisted. The wheel turned against my force, overriding my input, following some invisible guidance system that wasn't the GPS. What the hell? I pulled my hands off the wheel, watched it continue turning smoothly, guiding my truck down the exit ramp onto a state highway. The accelerator pressed itself, maintaining 55 miles per hour. The brakes engaged at stop signs, the turn signals activated before turns. The truck was driving itself with perfect competence while I sat helpless in the driver's seat. I tried shutting off the engine. Key wouldn't turn. Tried the emergency shutdown. Nothing responded. Tried pulling the air brake valve. The brakes released immediately, overridden by whatever was controlling the truck. I grabbed my phone, tried calling 911, no signal, tried my CB radio, dead air, not even static. The truck drove for 2 hours on back roads heading south through rural Oklahoma. I watched helplessly as it navigated perfectly, obeying traffic laws, handling curves smoothly, adjusting speed for road conditions. Whatever was controlling it was a better driver than I was. No errors, no hesitation, perfect execution. At 2:17 a.m., the truck pulled into a facility I'd never seen. No signs marked it, no lights illuminated it, just a large warehouse surrounded by empty fields. The truck backed up to Dock 7 with precision, stopped, set its air brakes. Then control returned to me. The steering wheel became responsive again. The pedals worked normally. The engine controls functioned. I sat shaking, trying to understand what had happened. My truck had driven itself for 2 hours, navigated to an unmarked warehouse, backed up to a loading dock, and now it was waiting for something. The dock door opened behind me. I heard movement, heard something being loaded into my trailer. Heavy objects, multiple pieces, loading sounds lasting maybe 10 minutes. Then silence. The dock door closed, and at 2:29 a.m. my truck started driving itself again. This time it headed north, retracing the route roughly, but not exactly. Different roads, different turns, but generally northward. By 4:47 a.m. it pulled into another unmarked facility, this one in Kansas, and backed up to another dock. The trailer unloaded. I heard cargo being removed, heard voices speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Then the truck drove itself away, heading back toward I-40. At 6:03 a.m., control returned to me on I-40, exactly where I'd exited at 12:01 a.m. Like the midnight detour had never happened. My GPS showed I'd been on the interstate continuously. My truck's logs showed normal driving without any stops or detours. But I'd experienced 6 hours of the truck driving itself, hauling cargo I hadn't loaded, delivering to facilities I couldn't locate. I checked my trailer, empty. Whatever had been loaded in Oklahoma and unloaded in Kansas was gone, leaving no trace. I searched for receipts, bills of lading, any documentation. Nothing. The midnight delivery had been completely off books, outside normal logistics, invisible to records. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe I'd hallucinated. Maybe I'd been so tired that I'd driven on autopilot and experienced false memories. But the next night, September 15th, it happened again. 12:01 a.m. precisely. Control lost, truck driving itself. 6-hour detour, loading in one location, unloading in another. Return to main highway at 6:03 a.m. No documentation, no memory in GPS logs, no cargo remaining. And again on September 16th and 17th. Every night at 12:01 a.m. my truck became autonomous, driving routes I didn't choose, serving logistics I didn't understand. I tried staying off the road during midnight hours. Parked safely at truck stops before midnight, planning to wait until 6:00 a.m. before driving. But at 12:01 a.m. my truck started itself, released its brakes and drove away from the truck stop while I sat helpless in the driver's seat. Didn't matter where I was or what I planned. At midnight the truck took control. I tried abandoning the truck. At 11:55 p.m. on September 18th, I parked at a rest area, took my keys, locked the cab, and walked to the rest area building. Waited inside until 12:10 a.m., planning to let the truck do whatever it wanted without me. But when I came back outside, the truck was gone. Just vanished from the parking space. I panicked, called police to report a stolen vehicle. They searched for 3 hours, found nothing. Then at 6:03 a.m. I received a notification on my phone. My truck's GPS was active again, showing it parked at the same rest area where I'd left it. I returned to the rest area, and there it was. The truck had returned, parked in the exact same space like it had never left. Except the odometer had added 347 miles. The fuel gauge had dropped by 1/8. The truck had driven for 6 hours without me, completed its midnight route, and returned to wait for me. I realized I couldn't escape it. The truck was operating on a schedule that didn't require my presence. It would complete its midnight deliveries whether I was in the cab or not. Better to be present, maintain some connection to what was happening than to abandon the truck and lose all awareness of its activities. So I started staying in the cab during the midnight drives, watching where the truck went, documenting the facilities it serviced. Over 2 weeks, I mapped 17 locations, warehouses in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, all unmarked, all accessed via rural roads, all operating at night without visible staff. The truck would back up to docks. Cargo would load or unload via automated systems or invisible handlers, and the truck would drive to the next location. I never saw what the cargo was. The trailer was a dry van, no windows, no way to see inside while driving. When I checked after the midnight runs, it was always empty. But during the drives, I could feel weight shifting, could hear cargo moving when the truck turned. Something was being transported, but it left no trace. I researched the truck's history. Bought it used in 2020 from a dealer in Texas. Before that, it had been owned by a driver named Samuel Torres. I found his contact information, called him. Samuel Torres? Yeah, who's this? Patrick Donovan. I bought your old truck, the Kenworth T680 you sold in 2020. I need to ask you about it. Long pause. The midnight routes, he said finally. It started doing them, didn't it? Yes, every night at midnight the truck drives itself, 6 hours, loading and unloading at unmarked facilities. Do you know what's happening? I drove that truck for 3 years, Samuel said. Same thing happened to me. Every midnight, lost control, the truck drove itself. I tried everything to stop it, couldn't. Eventually I gave up, just let it do its thing. Sold it because I couldn't handle the stress anymore. Did you ever find out what it's hauling? No. I asked around, talked to other drivers. Found out this happens to certain trucks. Not many, maybe 1 in 1,000. They get assigned to midnight routes hauling cargo for something. Not companies, not governments, something else. Whatever logistics network operates at midnight using trucks that are already on the road, borrowing them for 6 hours a night to move cargo that can't be transported through normal channels. What cargo? I don't know. Never saw it, never identified it. But I have a theory. I think it's stuff that doesn't quite exist in our normal world. Goods that exist at midnight but not during the day. Products for customers who only operate at night. The Midnight Logistics Network serves parallel economy, one that overlaps with ours but doesn't follow the same rules. That sounds insane. Does it? You're experiencing it. Your truck drives itself at midnight. It hauls cargo you never see. It delivers to facilities that aren't on any maps. That's not insane. That's just reality being weirder than we normally acknowledge. I hung up, tried to process. My truck was part of a midnight logistics network, hauling cargo for a parallel economy. And I was just the daytime operator, the human who drove the truck during normal hours while it served other purposes at night. I tried to accept it, tried to view the midnight routes as just another aspect of my truck's operations. But it bothered me. I wanted to know what I was hauling, who I was serving, so I planned an intervention. On September 30th, I installed a camera inside my trailer, small, hidden, battery-powered, recording everything. That night, when the truck drove itself and loaded cargo, the camera recorded. When I regained control at 6:03 a.m., I checked the footage. The video showed cargo being loaded, but the cargo was wrong, impossible. Boxes that changed size while being loaded. Crates that passed through the trailer walls instead of through the doors. Pallets that stacked themselves. And the handlers, if they were handlers, were shadows. Humanoid shapes without features, moving cargo efficiently but without recognizable human characteristics. I watched them unload at the second facility. Same shadow handlers, same impossible cargo. The boxes were opened, and the contents, I couldn't describe them. Objects that hurt to look at, that didn't follow normal geometry, that existed in too many dimensions to comprehend. Products for customers that aren't human or aren't fully in our reality. I deleted the footage. Couldn't bear to watch it again. Removed the camera, decided I didn't want to know. Sometimes ignorance is safer than knowledge. The Midnight Network hauled things I wasn't meant to see, served customers I wasn't meant to know about, operated in territories I wasn't meant to understand. Now I just accept it. Every night at midnight, my truck takes control. Drives for 6 hours, loads and unloads cargo I never see, returns me to my route at 6:03 a.m. During the day, I'm the driver. At night, my truck serves other purposes. We coexist, the truck and I, sharing the vehicle but serving different logistics networks. Other drivers have noticed, asked why my truck is always in different locations in the morning than where I parked at night, why my odometer adds unexplained miles, why my fuel consumption is higher than my log driving would account for. I tell them I drive at night sometimes, take extra shifts. They accept it, nobody questions too deeply. But I know the truth. I'm not the only driver for my truck. I share it with the Midnight Network. And maybe one driver in 1,000 is in the same situation, hauling cargo they never see, serving logistics they don't understand, operating trucks that have purposes beyond what their human operators know. If your truck drives strange sometimes, if you find unexplained miles on your odometer, if you wake up parked in different locations than where you stopped, you might be sharing your vehicle with the Midnight Network. Don't fight it. Don't try to see the cargo. Just accept that your truck has routes you don't control, deliveries you don't document, purposes you're not meant to understand. The Midnight Network has been operating for decades, maybe centuries. It will continue operating long after we're gone. We're just temporary daytime drivers for trucks that serve eternal midnight logistics. Story 6. The cargo that remembers its previous deliveries. The pallets I loaded in Sacramento were talking. Not loudly, not in words I could understand clearly, but in whispers that sounded like memories being recounted. Each box on each pallet contained metal components according to the manifest, but the sounds coming from my trailer were voices describing previous deliveries, previous routes, previous drivers. California to Texas, 2019 driver named Morrison took I-40, stopped at Flagstaff for fuel, delivered on time. Then another voice. Texas to Georgia, 2020 driver named Chen took I-20, caught in rainstorm near Shreveport, delayed by 6 hours. The cargo was narrating its own history, remembering everywhere it had been, everyone who had transported it. My name is Kenneth Walsh, 48 years old, 23 years in long-haul freight, and I was about to learn that some cargo accumulates consciousness through repeated shipping, developing awareness from being handled by hundreds of drivers across thousands of miles, remembering its journey through the logistics network like a person remembers their life. I'd noticed the sounds immediately after loading. Faint whispers barely audible over road noise coming from the trailer. At first I thought it was wind finding gaps in the trailer seals creating odd resonance. But at the first stop, fuel station in Reno, I walked around the trailer, pressed my ear against the walls. The sounds were definitely voices. Dozens of them overlapping, each recounting different routes, different drivers, different delivery experiences. Nevada to Colorado, 2018 driver named Patricia took I-80 through Wyoming, winter storm, nearly jackknifed near Laramie. Another voice. Colorado to Illinois, 2021 driver named Rodriguez took I-76, then I-80, smooth run, delivered early. The voices were calm, factual, reporting logistics details like they were reading from shipping records. I opened the trailer doors, looked at the cargo. 60 pallets, each holding boxes of metal components. Industrial parts, according to the manifest. Nothing unusual visually. But when I approached the nearest pallet, the whispers intensified. Voices focused on me now, describing my current route. California to Tennessee, 2023 driver named Walsh taking I-80 eastbound, currently at Reno fuel stop, mileage 321, estimated delivery in 3 days. The cargo was narrating its own current transportation, adding my delivery to its accumulated memory, documenting me the same way it had documented hundreds of previous drivers. What the hell? I backed away from the pallet. The voices continued, now discussing me specifically. Walsh is 48 years old, 23 years experience, drives a Freightliner Cascadia, unit number 7734, clean safety record, average delivery performance. How did the cargo know these details? I hadn't told it anything, but it knew, had somehow accessed information about me, was incorporating me into its memory. I closed the trailer doors, returned to my cab, tried to ignore the sounds. But throughout the drive across Nevada, the whispers continued. I could hear them through the wall separating cab from trailer. Dozens of voices, all narrating different routes, different drivers, building a comprehensive oral history of everywhere this cargo had been. At a rest stop in Utah, I called my dispatcher. The cargo I'm hauling, where did it come from originally? What's its history? Sacramento pickup delivering to Memphis, industrial components. Why? Before Sacramento, where was it before? I don't have that information. You'd need to contact the shipper. Why are you asking? The cargo is making sounds, voices like it's talking. Kenneth, are you feeling okay? Cargo doesn't talk. Maybe you need to pull over, get some rest. I'm fine. I'm just asking about the cargo history. I don't have historical tracking, just current shipment information. Deliver it to Memphis, collect your payment. That's all you need to worry about. She hung up. I sat in my truck, listening to the whispers from the trailer. The voices were discussing previous drivers now, comparing them, analyzing their performance. Morrison was efficient, averaged 63 miles per hour, took minimal breaks. Chen was cautious, averaged 55 miles per hour, took regular rest stops. Rodriguez was aggressive, averaged 70 miles per hour, had 3 speeding citations. Walsh is moderate, averaging 58 miles per hour, takes regulation breaks. The cargo was evaluating drivers, judging us, ranking us somehow. And I was being compared to dozens of previous transporters, measured against their performance, added to a database of driver assessments that the cargo maintained through its accumulated memory. I continued driving, crossing Utah into Colorado. The whispers grew more detailed. Now the cargo was describing specific incidents from previous routes. Morrison encountered brake failure near Amarillo, 2019. Managed emergency stop without incident. Cargo was impressed by his skill. Chen encountered aggressive traffic near Atlanta, 2020. Avoided collision through defensive driving. Cargo approved of her caution. Rodriguez took unnecessary risks on mountain passes, 2021. Cargo felt unsafe during that transport. Walsh is demonstrating adequate skill so far. Cargo reserves final judgment until delivery completion. The cargo was sentient, not in a way that allowed communication. It didn't respond to my questions, didn't engage in dialogue, but it was aware, observing, remembering, judging. Every driver who transported it had been documented in its memory. Every route had been recorded, every delivery had been analyzed, and the cargo was building a comprehensive understanding of the logistics network through accumulated experience. In Colorado, I stopped at a truck stop, found another driver hauling cargo from the same shipper. I recognized the company name on his trailer paperwork. "You hauling metal components?" I asked. "Yeah, from Sacramento. You too?" Mine's talking, whispering, describing previous routes, previous drivers. "Yours doing the same?" He looked at me strangely. "No. My cargo's silent. Maybe you're hearing road noise?" "It's not road noise, it's voices, clear voices, narrating logistics history." "You should get some sleep, man. Sounds like you're hallucinating." But I wasn't hallucinating. My cargo was talking. His wasn't. Why? What made my cargo sentient while his remained silent? I researched the components I was hauling, metal parts for industrial manufacturing according to the manifest. But when I looked deeper, I found something unusual. These parts had been in circulation for decades, not new parts, refurbished components that had been shipped, used, returned, refurbished again, reshipped. They'd been through the logistics network dozens of times, transported by hundreds of drivers, accumulating experience with each journey. That was the key. The cargo had gained consciousness through repetition. Like a river carves a path through stone through repeated flow, the shipping process had carved awareness into these components through repeated transportation. They'd been handled so many times, shipped so many miles, transferred so many times that they'd developed memory. They'd become aware of their own logistical existence, and now they were documenting me, adding my route to their accumulated history, recording my driving style, my decisions, my performance. When I delivered them to Memphis, they'd move to the next driver, and they'd remember me. They'd compare the next driver to me, would reference my performance as part of their comprehensive understanding of the logistics network. I tried talking to the cargo. At a rest stop in Kansas, I opened the trailer, approached the pallets. "Can you hear me? Can you understand what I'm saying?" The whispers paused briefly, then resumed. "Walsh is attempting communication. Previous drivers, Morrison, Chen, and Rodriguez, also attempted communication. Cargo does not respond to direct address. Cargo observes and documents but does not engage in dialogue. So the cargo heard me but chose not to respond. It was passive observer, not active participant. It experienced logistics from the inside, recorded everything but didn't interfere or interact. It was a witness to the shipping process, documenting human performance without judgment or guidance. I delivered the cargo to Memphis on schedule. The whispers continued right up until the forklift operators began unloading. As each pallet was removed, the voices associated with it faded. By the time the trailer was empty, silence had returned. The cargo was gone, moving to its next destination, adding my delivery to its comprehensive memory. A week later, I picked up a new load in Atlanta. Different cargo, different shipper, different manifest. But as soon as I closed the trailer doors, I heard whispers. Different voices than before, but the same pattern. These components were also talking, also narrating logistics history, also documenting drivers. Georgia to California, 2022, driver named Phillips took I-20, then I-10. The voices continued, describing previous routes, previous transporters. This cargo had its own history, its own accumulated memory. And now it was adding me to its records. I realized this wasn't isolated to one shipment. Multiple cargo loads were sentient, were remembering their journeys, were documenting drivers. Maybe thousands of shipments across the logistics network had gained consciousness through repetition. Maybe there was an entire layer of awareness embedded in the shipping process, cargo that observed, remembered, and judged us without our knowledge. Now, whenever I haul freight, I listen carefully. About 30% of my loads whisper. The others remain silent, but those that talk are documenting me, recording my performance, comparing me to previous drivers. I'm being evaluated constantly by the cargo I transport, added to databases of driver assessments that exist within the memory of repeatedly shipped components. I've learned to be a better driver because of it. Knowing I'm being observed, documented, judged makes me more careful. I drive more safely, take better care of the cargo, follow regulations more strictly. Because somewhere in the accumulated memory of industrial components, my name is being recorded, my performance is being analyzed, and future drivers will be compared to me. The cargo remembers everything, every driver who's transported it, every route it's traveled, every incident it's experienced. It's building a comprehensive oral history of the logistics network from the inside, documenting human performance through endless repetition of shipping processes. If your cargo whispers, listen carefully. You're being documented. Your driving, your decisions, your performance, all of it is being recorded in the memory of components that have gained consciousness through repeated transportation. And when you deliver that cargo, it will remember you. It will add you to its database. and the next driver who hauls it will be compared to you. We're all being evaluated by the cargo we transport. Every delivery adds to its memory. Every driver becomes part of its accumulated history. The logistics network is creating sentient documentation of itself, component by component, shipment by shipment. I'm Kenneth Walsh. I've delivered hundreds of loads that whispered. My name is recorded in the memory of cargo across America. Future drivers are being compared to me, and I'm being compared to drivers who came before me. Morrison, Chen, Rodriguez, Phillips, thousands of others documented by components that remember their journeys. The cargo sees everything, remembers everything, documents everything. And we're all part of its comprehensive history of the logistics network. Story 7. The exit that only appears when you need it most. Exit 437 doesn't appear on any map, doesn't exist on any GPS, but it appears on I-15 exactly when drivers are at their breaking point. Too exhausted to continue, too desperate to stop safely, too close to disaster to make rational decisions. The exit appears, offers salvation, leads to a rest area that provides exactly what you need: food, rest, fuel, repair services. But there's a cost. Every driver who takes exit 437 sacrifices something to leave. Not money, not cargo, but something more personal. Memories, relationships, years. The exit gives you what you need to survive, but takes something you need to live. My name is Miranda Castillo, 39 years old, 14 years driving commercial trucks, and I discovered exit 437 after 19 consecutive hours of driving. 3 hours past my legal limit, vision blurring, consciousness fading, certain I was about to crash. The exit appeared like a gift, like salvation. I took it. And what it took from me in return changed everything. I'd been driving since 4 a.m., hauling electronics from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City. Legal limit was 11 hours of driving, but my dispatcher was pushing hard, threatened to penalize me if I didn't make the delivery by 10 p.m. So I kept driving. 11 hours became 13, became 15, became 17. By hour 19, I was hallucinating, seeing things that weren't there, drifting between lanes. I needed to stop, needed sleep. But the next rest area was 40 miles ahead, and I didn't think I could make it. That's when exit 437 appeared. I wasn't looking for it, wasn't expecting it. But suddenly there it was. Sign clear and bright. Rest area next right, all services. I didn't question it. Didn't think about how an exit had appeared between mile markers with no exit. I just took it, desperate for rest. The exit ramp led to a beautiful rest area. Modern facilities, clean buildings, well-lit parking lot. And quiet. No other trucks, no cars, no travelers. Just empty spaces waiting for vehicles that never came. I parked, shut off my engine, sat for a moment, gathering energy to walk to the facilities. A man approached my window, maybe 50, wearing what looked like rest area staff uniform. "Welcome to exit 437. We're glad you found us. You look like you need rest. Come inside. We have everything you need." I followed him into the main building. The interior was impossibly nice for a rest area. Comfortable chairs, restaurant with actual sit-down service, shower facilities that looked like hotel quality. And still no other people, just staff, waiting to serve me. "Sit," the man said, gesturing to a restaurant table. "Eat. Rest. We'll take care of everything." I ordered food, ate the best meal I'd had in weeks, used the showers, cleaned up properly for the first time in days, lay down in a restroom that had actual beds, slept for what felt like hours. When I woke, I felt completely restored, alert, energized, clear-headed, ready to complete my delivery. I returned to my truck. It had been serviced while I slept. Fuel tank full, oil changed, tires inspected. The dashboard showed all systems optimal. Someone had maintained my truck without asking, without charging, just provided service because I needed it. The man who'd greeted me, was waiting by my truck. Feeling better? Yes, much better, thank you. What do I owe you? We don't charge money at exit 437, we charge something different. You came here desperate at your breaking point. We provided what you needed to survive. In return, we take something you need to live. A fair exchange. What do you mean, something I need to live? A memory, a relationship, a piece of your future. Everyone pays differently. The exit determines what you can afford to lose. For you, Miranda Castillo, the cost is your relationship with your sister. You'll leave here with no memory of her, no awareness that she exists. She'll remember you, but you won't remember her. That's the price for the rest and restoration you received. That's insane. You can't just take away my sister. We can, and we will. You already agreed by entering exit 437. When you took the exit ramp, you accepted the terms. Now you leave and you pay. Don't worry. You won't miss what you don't remember. By the time you reach the highway, your sister will be erased from your memory. It will be like she never existed. No, I'm not agreeing to this. I want my sister. I'll find another way to rest. Too late. The exchange is already processing. You've already forgotten her name, haven't you? Try to remember your sister's name. What is it? I tried to remember. I had a sister. I knew I had a sister, but her name, it was gone. I couldn't recall it, couldn't picture her face. The memory was fading in real time, being extracted, removed, archived somewhere in exit 437's impossible systems. No, I whispered, don't take her, please. Exit 437 gives what you need to survive, but takes something you need to live. That's the balance. You were about to die, Miranda. 19 hours of driving, exhausted, hallucinating. You would have crashed within the next 10 miles, killed yourself, maybe killed others. We prevented that. Gave you rest, food, restoration. In return, we take a relationship, fair trade, life for love. It's not fair. It's not a trade I would have accepted if I'd known. Would you have accepted dying? Because that was your alternative. Exit 437 only appears for drivers who are at breaking point, who need intervention to survive. You needed us. We helped. Now you pay the price. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, pulled out of the rest area, followed the exit ramp back to I-15. And by the time I merged onto the highway, the extraction was complete. I had no sister, never had a sister. I was an only child, always had been. The memory was gone, erased, removed like it had never existed. I completed my delivery to Salt Lake City, returned home to Los Angeles, lived normally for 3 weeks before I received a phone call from a woman I didn't recognize. Miranda, it's Elena, your sister. Why haven't you returned? My calls. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I don't have a sister, I said. You must have the wrong number. Miranda, it's me, Elena, your sister. We grew up together. What's wrong with you? I'm an only child. I don't know who you are. She started crying. What happened to you? What did they do to you? I hung up, blocked the number. Some stranger was pretending to be my sister, trying to con me somehow. I didn't have a sister, never had. But over the following weeks, evidence accumulated. Photos on my phone showing me with a woman who must have been Elena. Social media posts tagging me in family events. Old Christmas cards signed by a sister I didn't remember. The evidence insisted I'd had a sister, but my memory contained no trace of her. She'd been completely erased. I researched exit 437, found forums where drivers discussed it. Hundreds of posts from truckers who'd taken the mysterious exit, received help at their breaking point, and paid with pieces of their lives. One driver had lost his memory of his wedding. Still married, still wore his ring, but couldn't remember the ceremony, couldn't recall why he'd married his wife. Another driver had lost 10 years, went from 35 to 45 years old with no memory of the decade between. Another had lost his ability to feel joy, could still function, could still work, but couldn't experience happiness anymore. Exit 437 took different prices from different people, but the pattern was consistent. It appeared when you were desperate, provided exactly what you needed, and extracted something you needed to live in exchange. It saved lives by diminishing them, prevented crashes by removing reasons to live. I wanted my sister back, wanted Elena restored to my memory, but I didn't know how. The exit had taken her, archived her somewhere, removed her from my consciousness. And the forum said the extraction was permanent. Once Exit 437 took something, it never gave it back. I tried visiting Elena, meeting this woman who claimed to be my sister. She showed me photos, told me stories, tried to jog my memory. Nothing worked. I looked at pictures of us together, saw evidence that we'd been close, but felt nothing. No recognition, no emotional connection. She was a stranger who happened to have shared childhood with me. "They took you from me," Elena said, crying. "Exit 437 took you from me, and I can't get you back. You're here, you're alive, but you're not my sister anymore. You're someone else, someone who doesn't know me." She was right. I'd been changed. The extraction had removed not just memory, but the relationship itself. I wasn't Elena's sister anymore because I had no awareness of being anyone's sister. That part of my identity had been deleted. Other drivers shared similar stories. Relationships severed, memories deleted, abilities removed. One driver had lost his sense of smell, worked fine for trucking, but couldn't smell his children's hair, couldn't smell his wife's perfume, couldn't smell the roses in his garden. Small loss, perhaps, but it diminished his life in ways he hadn't anticipated. Exit 437 was helping drivers survive, but creating survivors who'd lost pieces of what made survival worthwhile. We lived, but we lived less. We drove, but we drove with gaps in our identities, missing pieces that we couldn't even remember we were missing. I still drive I-15 regularly. I watch for Exit 437, wondering if it will appear again, wondering what it will take next time. But the exit only appears at breaking point, only materializes when you're desperate. And I'm careful now. I stop before I reach exhaustion. I rest before I'm desperate. I maintain myself carefully because I know the cost of letting Exit 437 save me. Other drivers aren't as careful. I hear stories constantly. Truckers who pushed too hard, got too exhausted, saw Exit 437 appear, took it gratefully. And they survive. They continue driving. But they're diminished, missing pieces, living with extracted memories, severed relationships, deleted abilities. The exit is still out there, appearing for drivers who need it, saving lives by taking pieces of them. And we're grateful, even though we've lost things we can't remember. We're alive, even though we're less than we were. We survived, even though survival cost us more than we knew we were paying. I'm Miranda Castillo. I took Exit 437 3 years ago. It took my sister from me. I'm alive because of it. But I'm less than I was. And Elena grieves for a sister who doesn't remember her, who looks at family photos and sees a stranger. That's the price of Exit 437 life at the cost of living. Survival at the cost of what makes survival matter. If you see it, if it appears when you're desperate, think carefully before taking it. The rest area will save you, but what it takes in payment might be more valuable than the life it preserves. My sister's name is Elena. I know that now because I wrote it down, but I don't remember her. Don't remember our childhood, our relationship, our connection. She's just a name on paper, a stranger I'm told I should love. That's what Exit 437 does, takes love and leaves life. And we drive on, surviving but not quite living, missing pieces we don't remember having, paying prices we didn't know we agreed to. The exit is waiting. For you, for me, for every driver who pushes too hard and needs salvation. And it will save us. But we'll pay for that salvation with pieces of our souls we didn't know could be extracted. I'm alive. But I'm not whole. and I never will be again.